all the games I used to play in my younger, wilder days. The game of clubs and tees, it never crossed my mind. But after some discussion with my closest, dearest friends, I decided that I'd give it one good try.
Welcome into another episode of the Turn Fantasy Golf Podcast. My name is Andrew Poor. Go by Andrew Putters. And we have an exciting show ahead. We got my usual partner, Joe Nicely from Rotoballer.com, and his cohort from the website, Spencer from Tee Off Sports. Is that right? Tee Off Sports, isn't that the handle?
Yep, Tee Off Sports.
There we go. All the way from the hot Las Vegas, Nevada. Joe Nicely, let's first get one thing out of the way. Rotoballer.com, Masters Week. What we got?
Yeah, man, we got everything. We got a PGA DFS research station. We got a course breakdown that Josh Bennett's doing. Spencer can talk a little bit about his Vegas report that's on fire. We got a core four. We got a Bible over there talking about every player in the field. So we got everything you need over at Rotoballer. Head over there now. You can sign up for the rest of the season for $69. Use promo code NICE or use promo code TEEOFF. We also have weekly passes. If you just want to check us out for the Masters, you can definitely do that. But we hope you go there and check it out. Lots of great free content as well. And we're going to get you through the Masters this week.
So, like I said, we got a guest on, our gambling expert from Las Vegas, Nevada, born and bred, Spencer, Tee Off Sports. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. It's a pleasure to do your show. It's been a long time coming, I feel like. So, thank you for having me on here, and it should be a good show for the Masters.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Cannot wait. Favorite week of the year by far for golf. Not even close. Spring is finally here. In the South, we get birds chirping, sun's up. You get the dew in the mornings. That's just a great feeling, I think. So, but first, we got to take care of last week. We got to talk about last week, guys. Big week for a couple of things. Number one, we cannot just move right over Jordan Spieth. We've said he's been back, but he is back. What are we thinking, guys? Is he back?
Yeah, without a doubt, man. We've talked about him a lot on this show, that he's back. We feel like we jumped on early in the year. We saw some great rounds from him, and everything came together last week at Valero, which we thought was really possible. And, you feel like he's back because of the iron play. This isn't a fluky, make tons of putts, chipping tons of things in. It's done on the strength of his iron play, and his irons are firing like we hadn't seen really since 2017, the last time he was in the winner's circle. So it makes you think it's real, makes you think it's sustainable, and makes you really excited for this week.
Yeah. So, go ahead, Spencer.
No, sorry about that. Like Joe and I were talking before the show got started here, and Spieth's performance, we'll get into the DraftKings pricing and everything, not to fast forward the show here, but, Spieth is going to be probably the most popular player on the board now based off of what he's done. And, Joe and I were having discussion of, what that does, should we be buying into this? What are our expectation levels behind this? And it's like, look, Augusta's where Spieth has always performed at. He won here in 2015. He should have won here in 2016. In 2017, he came 11th, 2018, third. And when we look at his results of what he's done recently, he has top 10s just littered across the board. He has his fourth at the Waste Management, third at Pebble Beach, fourth at the API. Obviously now the first at Valero. And Joe's 100% correct. The irons are what would make me believe that this is real. So, this isn't a fluke. Spieth is going to be here to stay at this point. And, I like him for the Masters this week. I think that we'll get into discussing his price a little bit later on, but you have to like what you see from him at this moment.
Yeah, so just going away from stats alone, you guys are the stat guys. I'm the field player here. It just feels good with Spieth pinning it back on the game. I think one writer said this week that really with Jordan, all he needs to do is for his ball striking to not get him in trouble and let his sportsmanship and his will to win take over, along with his short game. Undeniably, his short game is the best when he's on. So, yeah, I cannot wait. That's the number one announcement, or one thing we can't just move over. I think I had Chris Kirk a top 5 this weekend on my heart play. Joe, Corey Connors, he's top 20. Maybe 17th, somewhere in there. Don't know exactly.
Yeah, he was in there. He was in there.
Big announcement for the Brook, our home club, Joe. Ryan Hall takes down what I call it earlier, the Haskins Award. What is it?
Yeah, the Haskins.
Haskins Award, winning the tournament in Augusta, right down the street from Augusta National, actually winning in a playoff, which earned him an exemption to the 3M Open. Hey, I hear there's a place to stay up there. We know a guy that lives not too far from the course. Might be host home material. We're calling him out on the show. Host home material, just swish. So, but no, congratulations, Ryan Hall. We'll look into trying to get him on here. It shouldn't be too hard. Hopefully, we'll get him on the show soon. Talk about that playoff win, and oh man, it's awesome. It's a great feat for a local kid, junior at the University of South Carolina. Ryan Hall, great talent. So, y'all ready to talk about the Masters or what?
Yes, I'm good to go.
Okay, here we go. So, one thing we can't get by is what about this sweet hat we got on here, Joe? It's Masters tribute to the Masters. You can get it for us. Just DM the golf pod or at the Turn Golf Pod on Twitter, and we'll get you one, man. $25 plus shipping. We'll get it to you. There's limited.
Yeah, we're also, we don't want to forget, Andrew, we're also doing a giveaway. You can enter all this week. You can go to our Twitter account to find out the rules on that. You just subscribe to the YouTube channel and just reply to the tweet, and we'll get you entered into the contest. We'll pull a winner out next week.
That's right. So we usually start just at the top of the board. We'll usually start with the course. So nothing's changed since the fall, guys. This is the same Augusta we saw then. Unofficial yards about 7,500, a little under 7,500. We know we got lightning fast greens. We don't even know what they measure because they won't tell the public. This is, I mean, if you follow golf at all, you know Augusta National. So we'll skim right over that. Get straight into DraftKings, guys. So up top, I mean, I guess we'll have to break these down in two groups. Well, yeah, we will, because pricing is usually so spread out in this major tournament, especially with the limited field that we have here at Augusta, and the odd cut system they have here. So DJ, Rahm, DeChambeau up top, 11-5 to 10-8. This is the who's who. I feel like you've got Mr. Consistency, a guy that can win any time. And what you said earlier, Joe, before we got on here, the highest ceiling with the lowest floor. Joe, you go first on these top three.
Yeah, man, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. Can't go wrong with any of these three. I feel like Rahm comes in with the least amount of concerns or questions around his game right now. He's just been ultra consistent. His gained strokes tee to green in every start since last August. It doesn't come much more consistent than that. It's played extremely well at Augusta. We know that a major's coming at some point for him. Kind of the only concern with Rahm was the baby coming, and the baby came over the weekend. So congratulations to the Rahms on the little boy. So that kind of tossed that concern out the window. When you start getting into DJs, the defending champion won here in record-breaking fashion back in November at 20 under par. But hadn't looked great lately. One over in Saudi to kind of kick off the year, but only one top 10 in 4 U.S. starts this year. We know they can flip the switch, but DJ's kind of looked un-DJ-like so far this year. And then you mentioned Bryson DeChambeau, man. We were talking before the show, and I feel like he's got the highest ceiling of anybody in this tournament. As far as just being able to go out and dominate this week, he can do it. But I also think that when you start looking at 10K and above, he's probably got the lowest floor of these guys. Definitely feels like you're gambling a little bit with Bryson, but pay off big time if you want to go there. Spencer, give me your thoughts on these three guys. I don't feel like you can go wrong. Rahm feels safe. Bryson feels like you're grabbing a ton of upside, and DJ feels like maybe if a defending champ can be a sleeper, DJ's maybe a little bit of a sleeper, Spencer.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably let ownership dictate what I'm going to do. Like if I'm playing a single entry or a 3 max here, I might be more willing to go down the chalky road that's going to be Rahm. I think if you're playing in the millionaire maker, Dustin is probably going to be the least owned of the three. Rahm is going to probably carry about 15%. Dustin, 12, 13, and Rahm right now is trending at about 17. But I would say that your assessment of it's pretty spot on. I mean, the one thing I would add to it is that I don't think it affects these three guys as much as some of the other people in the tournament. But when we last saw this played, it was in October. We got much softer conditions. The tournament record score of 20 under par from Dustin. I'm not going to, I mean, I don't really have any skepticism from him, but some of these guys making their second appearance here, where their first appearance, they got the soft conditions. I think that that's maybe something to look into. I'd expect the course to be fiery fast, strokes gained around the green, 3-putt percentage, all those things are going to come into play. I run a model that essentially is a 2-year sample size of data. And, the further the year gets into play, the more I play this year than the year before. But Rahm is the number one player for me in my model pretty much whenever I run things. As you said, Joe, Bryson DeChambeau has the upside to crack this and run away with the tournament, I would think. But when we look at his results, he hasn't done that here in the past. He has a 34th in 2020, a 29th in 2019. And in his other two appearances, he didn't crack the top 20. So, I think something has to be said about he doesn't get to use his green book here. We know he's real scientific with it. Maybe that's something that has come to hurt him. Maybe he's trying for too much distance. And then, as you mentioned with Dustin Johnson, his form leading into this is not quite what it was in October. He hasn't come in the top 25 in the last 3 tournaments. His performance at the Genesis, where he came 8th, he probably should have won that and didn't exactly look right. And at least on Saturday and Sunday with that. And then when we look at his putting, he's 71st in his last 24 rounds here, or in general. And then 52nd in scrambling in my data. And then the one thing that always surprises me, he's just not scoring on par 5s. And at Augusta, you have to score on the par 5s and, avoid bogeys on the par 4s. And I worry a little bit about Dustin from that, but he's such an elite talent. He can turn it around at any point.
Yeah, I love the fresh information here you're spinning at us. Stat after stat after stat. I like it. As for me, on every week, if I had to play a player here, it's going to be DJ, because he's just been a machine, a top 10 machine here. It seems like I remember sitting with Joe on the couch several years in a row, being like, man, if DJ just had made like 3 10-footers on the back 9, he wins by 2 shots at Augusta. And but he's always going to be there. But at the same time, you're paying 11.5. You probably could get better options by taking some of that money and spending it elsewhere. Moving down the next 3 guys, JT, Rory, Xander. This is an interesting group because you're getting 3 great talents at a discount compared to the first 3. Arguably the best player in the world, JT, or the ability to be the best player. We know the best talent in the world, Rory McIlroy, who's been there twice on Sunday and can't get it done. Xander waiting to break through on a major. Where we at on these 3 guys? You go first time this time, Spencer.
This might be an unpopular opinion. I kind of like Xander in this spot. I think the consensus around him is that he's not playing very good golf. And I wouldn't necessarily say that is the truth behind it. Like when we look at what he did at the match play, he loses in the sudden death playoff to Scheffler there. The miscut at the Players is something that I'm not necessarily going to count against him. I think that tournament is extremely volatile. You get to hole number 17 there. Guys are going into the water left and right. And sure, the 39th at the WGC concession isn't exactly what you would be looking for, but I think we're getting a discount from him. We're going to have the least ownership in this range at least. Rory is always interesting in every tournament. His history at the Masters is about as good as it can be without a win. The one thing that would worry me is if this tournament does play fast, he hasn't won a tournament in his career at 12 under par or worse. Or I guess he's won at 12 under par. He hasn't won at worse than 12 under par. So that would scare me a little bit if I'm trying to, figure out exactly what I want to do with him. That's not to say we've seen him win tournaments before where he's 12 under par and the rest of the tournaments like 5 under par with it. So it's not to say that he can't, but I don't think this version of Rory is as good as it was a couple years ago. And then, Justin Thomas has the potential to dominate just like Bryson does. He hasn't always putted well at Augusta. He was 84th of 87 players here in 2019. That would be my one concern. But when we look at his progression at this tournament, he's bettered it every single year. And, last year he came in fourth. So, first, second, or third seems to be where we're moving with this. And Thomas has as much upside as anybody that's probably not named Bryson DeChambeau.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Spencer. Especially about JT. I think the upside's there. We've seen him get nuclear hot with the irons at concessions and at the players en route to that big victory. You can say a lot of things about Augusta. Obviously, need to score on the par fives. Obviously, need to scramble well. But I think it comes down to being a second shot golf course, kind of in the grand scheme of things. Approach plays very indicative of success there. And JT in the last 3 years ranks first in strokes gained approach and first in greens in the regulation in the last 3 Masters. So I think JT certainly feels like the safest play to me, right along with Rahm above 10K. And you do also have that kind of dominating upside. Rory's very intriguing, and Xander as well. I like where you're at with Xander, Spencer. It feels like he was really chalky back in November, if I'm remembering correctly. A lot of people were on that bandwagon, and it doesn't seem like folks are there this week. So it's maybe an ownership play for me with Xander, the type of guy that can just do everything well. We saw him finish runner up here in 2019. Had a T17, I believe, in November and didn't really play all that well. So we know he can handle this golf course. I'm with you on his miscut at the players, putting very, very little stock in that. And then Rory, obviously had a horrible performance at the players, horrible performance at the match play. But he's played unbelievably well here. 3 top 5s and 3 top 10s in his last 7 Master starts. Hasn't won it, as you mentioned, but this place brings out the best in him. So JT, I would feel comfortable, in pretty much any format this week, whereas Rory and Xander, I'm going to keep an eye on ownership, and we'll consider those guys in GPPs.
Well, guys, that's a lot of information for those top 6 guys, but I'm just like every other week. I'm putting a line in the sand below Xander, and this is where I'm starting my lineup right here. These next few: Patrick Cantlay, Morikawa, Spieth, Reed, who knows if Koepka's playing, Finau, and Webb Simpson. This is where the money's going to be divided up in this group of guys right here. And I think we've already hit on Spieth a little bit, but we can talk more. I mean, it's possible in these single entry tournaments he's going to be 40-50% owned, right, guys?
Yeah, he's going to go huge ownership. I'm seeing him at around 25 right now, which is the highest on the slate. So yeah, Andrew, I think you're right. You start looking in cash games, single entry stuff. He's going to be way up there. He's going to grab not only kind of the hardcore DFS guys, but he's also going to grab a ton of the casual fans this week. So his ownership's just going to skyrocket. And Spencer and I were talking earlier. We feel like Spieth's game is there, and it feels like you want to roster Spieth. But you kind of almost feel like in a tournament like the Millie Maker, where almost that pendulum's almost swung to the point where you start wanting to consider fading him maybe, just because the ownership is getting up there so high. I believe he'll play well. I believe he is back. I would like to see him play well, but just kind of from a game theory standpoint, you might want to start considering a fade in these huge field GPPs. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts on Spieth, Spencer. It's kind of what everybody's talking about right now. We'll get into the rest of these nines, but give me your thoughts on Spieth, man.
Yeah, I think you're kind of spot on with that. It's going to come down to what kind of contests you're playing. And, if you read my articles that I write here for like the Draftkings pieces and stuff, like I'm usually the first person that'll jump off the bandwagon of somebody who's extremely popular for the week. Like I'm always trying to go the contrarian route whenever possible with it, but it's just hard with Spieth. Like his form looks so good right now. The irons are dialed in. His short game for Augusta is exactly what you're hoping to find. Like, the victory has made this a lot more difficult. I think before the victory, you could take a guy like Cantlay, you could take a guy like Reed. A lot of those options would have carried a bunch of ownership also. And don't get me wrong, they're still going to carry their fair share of ownership. But Spieth has jumped into this 25% plus range in a lot of contests. Then, if we're talking about a millionaire maker where if we have 25% of people on him, like I don't know if it makes sense from a game theory standpoint. Like, I'd almost rather just look, pick somebody else, hope for the best, and maybe play Spieth in cash games or play Spieth in single entries or things of that nature. But this is not one of the spots where I think this is bad chalk. Like, this feels like good chalk to me, and somebody I am going to find a way to have exposure to this week, but it's going to have to come in the right situations.
So are we talking that we can take this to one of two ways? Is one is we go ahead and just bite the bullet, play Spieth, and hope we get the right lineup, or we don't take him at all and hope he finishes 12th. And that kind of where we're at.
Yeah, I'll let Spencer kind of chime in on this, but I almost feel like you got to make a stand. If you're going to play Spieth, you've almost got to be, I don't want to say all in, but you've almost got to be overweight in comparison to the field on Spieth. I feel, if you're in, you better get in all the way, and if not, you want to be very underweight. It's almost one of those things where, you can't be halfway in or halfway out. You kind of got to make a decision on Jordan Spieth this week. Am I wrong in that line of thinking, Spencer? Just get way overweight or way underweight?
No, I think I couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, that's exactly how you want to be thinking about this. It's one of those spots where it's like, if you're going to play him 1 out of every 4 lineups and you're just hovering around what the public consensus is, there's no point in that. Like, you're I don't want to say you're creating dead money into it, because you're not, but you're not leveraging ownership the way that you should be. Like, I'm either playing him to where it's like, okay, let's completely fade him and play him at like 0%, or let's pick him in like 60-70% of lineups and just go wild with it and try to find all the combinations possible. And like, it's a good point that you made. That's something you can do in the Millionaire Maker. If you're like maxing out that contest, look, if you want to play 60% Spieth in that, like, I'm not going to talk anybody out of that. I think that's a realistic path to go. I just don't like fitting, within a couple percent of what the projected ownership is. I don't think you get anything out of that. I think it's too difficult to try to find the optimal or the optimum situation here, or the optimum lineup that you're trying to have. So yeah, I think you're 100% spot on with that. I think it just comes down to how much do you like and how aggressive or conservative do you want to be in the situation.
Could not have said it better myself, guys. I usually lean more to if I'm going to go all in on somebody, I usually put them in about 80%. But and I was talking up Spieth when he wasn't making, whenever he was finishing 45th. So I don't know what to do here. But I will say one thing about the Masters here, and this is going to be in the 9K and above range, guys. One thing about the Masters every year is there's always 1 to 2 guys that are like playing terrible and somehow are right there on Sunday. And what I mean by they play terrible up to the week of the Masters. And when I say terrible, I mean hasn't been in it. And I'm gonna name 3 names here in their most recent form. You're like, man, something's not right. Xander, Cantlay, top 5 Tony. Something hadn't been right in their game in the last, say, month and a half. Their finishes and things like that. But one of those names is gonna be right there on Sunday, I feel like. Just an observation using history with that, we saw a little bit of that with Lee Westwood out of nowhere, at the Players. The Players is well known for having people come out of nowhere to be up there at the leaderboard. And, Augusta's a funny place, right? I mean, guys that shouldn't be in there, all of a sudden, boom, they're there on Sunday. So let's move on down in the 8K range. Hatton, Westwood, Hovland, Sanjay, Berger, Scheffler, Matsuyama. Bunch of names to love here, guys. All the way down to Fleetwood, Fitzpatrick, Cam Smith. Bunch of names to love right here. Some have got great history in this tournament. Some do not have great history. One name that sticks out to me, tied for second, and I think if the course plays faster, it'll help him. Sanjay M. Tied for second in the fall. You guys give me your thoughts on this group of guys. Joe, you go first.
Yeah, man. Just to kind of touch on there, right above 9K, Brooks Koepka, tons of questions with him. That's something I think we'll just have to keep an eye on as the week progresses. Certainly a high risk, high reward play there. And you mentioned Tony, man, at 9-1 there. Has been a beast at the Masters. Hasn't looked great in his last couple of starts, but I'm hoping that puts it in his ownership. Maybe gets us a little under the radar there with Tony. I was all in November, and I'll be going back to that well, even though there are the win equity concerns. But yeah, man, as you start getting down into the eights, Andrew, as you mentioned, a lot of interesting guys. Some maybe not a great course fit, some maybe with kind of questionable recent form, some with a little or bad course history. So there's a lot to dig into there in the eights. Hatton has yet to crack the code at Augusta National, even though he's played well basically everywhere else. Lee Westwood, we know experience matters on this golf course. I think course history is very important this week. Westwood's a 2-time runner up here. Had a runner up at the Players, runner up at the API. So I think you can certainly look at Westwood, although I was a little surprised by this price tag. Pretty stout price tag in what's an otherwise really soft scale. Hovland, we know, is a beast. There's concerns there for the short game with me. That kind of circles back up to Colin Morikawa. Similar concerns with him. I love the ball striking, but do worry about the lack of experience and the kind of come and go short game with those two. Sungjae, I was surprised by the runner up in November, honestly. Kind of bucked a lot of trends there. Wasn't in great form coming in. In his Masters debut, which is this place is notoriously tough on first timers, guys. So I was surprised by Sungjae in November, and I'm probably a little bit lower on Sungjae than most this week. He's actually been pretty spotty ball striking and around the green. In his last few starts, his numbers are lower around the green than we've seen them in quite a while. So I'm worried about this week where scrambling is going to be important. Berger, he's just a workhorse, man. You know, you guys both know that I really like Daniel Berger. A grinder, consistent. You like him on firm and fast courses. He's played well in his previous trips to Augusta. So they're in that range. Berger's sticking out to me, even though I always like Hovland, and I'm intrigued by Westwood. Give me your thoughts there, Spencer, and talk about some guys as we get on down the 8Ks.
Yeah, I mean, if we start this with Tyrrell Hatton, I would say that you're going to have to make a decision here. His form has been awful at Augusta. He has a miscut, a 56th, a 44th, and a miscut. You know, what that means to you, you're going to have to decipher on it. I don't really want to buy into that. I understand he's a top player in the world. It can turn around. That's not necessarily something I'm trying to buy into. Lee Westwood at 8,800. I agree with you, Joe. I'm very surprised at this price tag. You know, based off of a price standpoint here, he's one of the most overrated guys for me in my model. It doesn't mean that he doesn't have potential. You know, we saw him come second here in 2016. He's had a couple other, you know, pretty good runs here recently at the tournament, but that's not necessarily the path I want to go down either. You touched on the Hovland situation. His short game will always worry me when it comes to a really firm, fast test. We kind of saw that at Concession to an extent. Like, he competed there, he almost won the tournament, but he put up some really big numbers, and I don't think it's as easy to make birdies at the Masters. Like, you're going to be doing most of your scoring opportunities on the par 5. So if he's finding mistakes and his short game falls apart, it's not that I'm not going to play him. I just think that it's a tough spot to go to. Sungjae, as you mentioned, his irons have been off. I think, as you said, he bucked the trend a little bit with his second place finish. Like, we haven't seen a guy win the Masters in their first try since Fuzzy Zeller in 1979. He almost did it. I think the soft test probably helped him out. Maybe the firmness helps him, as you said, Andrew, but I don't know. The irons are going to have to be there. And then if I'm trying to find two guys that I really like here, I also like Daniel Berger. To me, he's a top 10 player in the world every single week. He's underrated by the public. You know, in the betting market, there's places in Vegas where you can find him as high as 48-1. I worry that his short game could jeopardize his chances a little bit. We've seen him around the green struggle here and there. We've seen him with a bad 3-putt percentage here and there. But, you know, for the price tag you're getting a lot of upside there. And then the one name that I just keep finding myself going to is Cameron Smith at 8,200. You have the second here last year. And for as much as you want to maybe pick some holes into what that was, you also have the 5th place in 2018. And when we look at his recent form, he has 3 top 20 finishes in his last 4 tournaments. If we look at him from, you know, a metric standpoint, he's 11th around the green in his last 24 rounds. He's 19th on par 3 average, which I don't know. I mean, you're going to have to like not mess up the par 3s. And he's the number 1 par 5 scorer this year. Like, I ran a weighted model for him where he's 7th in par 5. birdie or better percentage, and that's just incorporating some of the stats from last year. But he's also 5th in birdie or better conversion percentage. So I think it feels like a really good spot for him. I know the ownership's starting to get kind of catch fire with him, but I think it's a spot where he has a chance to win this tournament. And he's also 48-1 in Vegas. And, that's a ticket that I punched earlier today, but that's just a spot that I keep finding myself going back to.
Yeah, I'm with you, Spencer. I love Cam Smith. We talk about him a lot on the show. I was all in back in November when no one was on him, and he logged the T2. Now, 6 months later, going to be a very popular option, but it's tough to argue with him, man. This is his type of track. He can get up and down from anywhere. And like you said, the form's been really good. He's actually been playing really well with his irons, gain strokes on approach in the last 3 starts. Some really good finishes. The same can be said for Matthew Fitzpatrick, who's looked really sharp in the U.S. this year. Won multiple times internationally already, but hadn't broke through in America. But Matthew Fitzpatrick seems like he's coming. It seems like there's a win coming very soon. He's played solid in his previous trips to Augusta, so I think you can, right along with Cam Smith, you can look at Matt Fitzpatrick right there. If it's going to be firmer and faster this year, I'm not as worried about the lack of length for guys like Fitzpatrick. They're going to be getting the rollout on those drives, and we kind of jumped over 2 really good players, Scotty Scheffler and Hideki Matsuyama. Matsuyama's got great course history, kind of sluggish form this year, hadn't really looked sharp, although he continuously gained strokes on approach, and he's been an Augusta beast. So I think you can look at Matsuyama there. Scheffler has a ton of talent, looked really good in his Augusta debut last year, and almost won the match play. So tons of options to look at here in the 8s. I'm with you. There's a couple guys I'm going to be completely fading. Hatton's going to be one of those. I'll be underweight on him, but there's a couple guys that I'll be kind of relying on here with Cam Smith and Daniel Berger sticking out as a couple of those guys.
Yeah, cannot agree more with you on the Cam Smith thought. Both of you guys, yeah. He's a bulldog on the golf course. He never gives up. We want that, especially, there's possibilities of some thunderstorms Thursday, Friday. So, if they get in some weird times and being out there for a long period of time, that bulldog attitude and grinding attitude will help definitely his game. But guys, now we're getting into my guys right here. The 7,000 range is where my guys are gonna. This is where the people I talk about every week.
What heaven looks like to Andrew Putters.
Sergio, Bubba, Casey, Scott, Day, Oosthuizen. I mean, I can't go wrong with any of these guys, I mean, here's the problem, though. Sergio hasn't made a cut since he won. What, I think, was he out for COVID for last in the fall? So, Casey, surprisingly enough, has not had a lot of success here. Yeah, we know what Adam Scott does. If it gets faster it gets, probably the more it plays into his hands. We need scores closer to par for Scott. I feel like. I don't know, guys. What's your thoughts on this range? I mean, we're all in. Are we just going to be auto clicking Oosthuizen every year here for like the next decade?
Well, let me say one thing. Let me just backtrack this really fast here. I want to touch on something that Joe said about Matthew Fitzpatrick.
Okay.
And the one thing with that is the more difficult a course gets, the better Matthew Fitzpatrick usually is. So I really like where Joe's thinking there. We'll move forward now with that. I just wanted to just give Joe some credit there because I think that's a very stout point that he brought up. But as far as Oosthuizen goes, yeah, I mean, I'm kind of at this position now that every single time I run a model, he's a positive equity play for me from what I'm looking for. He has the short game. He's the putter that you want to see. I think Jason Day kind of fits that too. I don't think that comes as a shock to anybody that I'm going to come onto a show and talk about Jason Day whenever I get the opportunity to. But, you have those two guys. I think Bubba's probably overvalued. I think you get a little bit name recognition from his multiple victories here. Sergio, as you said, Andrew, he's missed the cut the last 2 times after winning it in 2017. Casey is going to be the extreme chalk in this range. He hasn't been good in the last 2 years. He doesn't have better than a 38th. He does have a 6th and a 4th in 2017 and 2016. My biggest concern when it comes to him is, do we really trust him to win a major when it comes down the stretch? And maybe that's more of a betting standpoint than it is a DraftKings mentality there. And you could have said the same thing about Sergio until he got the job done. But I do have some concerns of him being able to get the job done. And then, if we trickle it just a little bit lower in odds, like Abraham Answer is another guy who showed form here last year with his 13th. I don't know if he can maintain that. I'd be curious to hear what you guys think on him, but it is a really nice range here from like 7,400 to, if you want to say up to Sergio at 7,900, because I do think he has playability in spots, but it's a spot where, millionaire makers are probably going to be decided. If you can be correct on Scott or Day or Oosthuizen and, find one of these guys that gives you a top 5 finish, I think there's a lot of possibilities that you can gain over the field.
Yeah, it's veteran heaven through there, Andrew. I know you're trying to figure out how to play all these guys.
Well, I would say the point he made, I actually like Casey the least, and he's for my thoughts, especially I even like him the least even more if he's going to be the chalkiest of the chalk here.
Yeah, that's the elephant in the room for me in this range is Paul Casey's ownership. Unquestionably, he feels underpriced to me, guys. I hear where you're coming from, but this price is just so cheap that it almost forces you to consider him. But that said, when his ownership starts getting up there to these Spieth lock levels this week, you're talking 20+%. In my mind, you have to start considering going all in or all out. Kind of like we mentioned with Jordan Spieth. I want to be really overweight on Paul Casey or really underweight on Paul Casey. Kind of the thing that helps, or there's some really good pivots there. My history with Sergio, Andrew, especially in this event. I had a really, really good week the year that Sergio won, and I had a really, really bad week the week that he hit 5 in the water. So, I actually like Sergio this week. I think the ball striking is there. He's showing form. He's a veteran that knows how to play this course, and it just kind of feels like his arrow's pointing up coming into this week. Whereas Bubba, I maybe feel like it's going the other way. I really liked his ball striking at the end of last year. Liked him back in the November Masters. Nowhere near as kind of excited and optimistic about his chances this week. Adam Scott, I was a little concerned about the ball striking, but he played really, really well at the Honda, which kind of has put me back on Adam Scott. Just a really classy player, a guy that we know can handle this golf course, has a tremendous record here. And same can be said of Day and Louis. Both just veterans that know how to play this course, both shown some form this year. So certainly guys you can look at, and kind of getting down to where Spencer touched on that. Abraham Answer, Wally Neiman coin flip there is very interesting to me. Neiman missed the November Masters with COVID, but he opened up this year with a couple of runner-ups, and man, the guy just feels like a star in the making. Excellent ball striker. We know he's good off the tee. We know he's very good on approach with a short game that can come and go, but certainly has major championship type talent. Answer, I don't know that he possesses that type of natural talent that Neiman does, but the guy's classy from tee to green. The irons have been looking good. He struggled around the green to start the year, but that's certainly coming along now. So I think you can go either place there, especially if you're looking to pivot off Paul Casey.
Yeah, and I think that, like, if I was to power rate this range from what we're looking at, and for the record, Paul Casey is the top guy for me in this range from an overall rank standpoint. I just worry about the ownership. I think there's other places to pivot. Like, I like Sergio. I like Jason Day. I like Louis Oosthuizen. I agree with you on Neiman. Neiman has the pedigree that can be somebody who competes here. Like, he has his miscut in his one effort. He was also, 21 years old at the time when he played the Masters. I don't know how much we can take into account with that. The kid's quite the ball striker with a pedigree that, can be a top 5-10 player in the world. And as you mentioned with Answer, Answer might be somebody that I might more so just from an ownership standpoint, he's 9%, throw him into some lineups. I don't necessarily expect him to win, but, in the same breath, I don't expect a lot of these guys to win down in this range. Like, I'm not necessarily taking Neiman expecting a victory out of him, but at 12% at a guy at 7,400, I do think he can give you a top 10 showing in a tournament like this.
Yeah, and another interesting kind of note between those two, Spencer. I think Neiman, I'm seeing, if I'm right, let me know if I'm wrong, but I'm seeing Neiman like 50, 55 to 1, and seeing Answer 75, 80 to 1. So that kind of lets what, at least where Vegas has them as far as win equity goes.
Yeah, you're correct with that. I mean, like, I think that's an important thing to look at when you are trying to piece together some of these things. Like, if you have really close tie-breaking decisions and you can't necessarily figure out which route you want to go with it, look, a lot of times these guys that are priced next to each other will be in a head-to-head matchup against each other. Sometimes you can look at it like that. As Joe just mentioned, there's various prices in Vegas where there's different numbers. Like, I've seen Answer as high as 90. I've seen Neiman as high as 75. There's lower numbers there, but pretty much any book you look at, Neiman is higher in his implied win probability with it. So I think when you look at those things, like if you're trying to find somebody with a ton of upside, I would say Neiman's the way to go. If you're trying to find somebody, who's maybe a little bit safer, that's going to give you a cut that you can get a 17th place finish from, Answer would probably be the guy that I'm going to pencil in there. And the one guy that I would like to talk about, I don't know if I'm going too far down now on the list. What are your guys' thoughts on Will Zalatoris?
Well, first of all, I was getting ready to say, if those guys above are my guys, these next ones are Joe's guys. Neiman, Answer, Willie Z. He's been talking about Willie Z since last August every week. He can't talk enough about him. I'm going to touch on your two guys you just talked about. I think Joaquin Niemann has zero win ability on this golf course because he is a great ball striker, but he's a low ball hitter. Low ball hitters do not naturally have success at Augusta. Same thing can be said about Answer. Not that he's not a great ball striker, but at times, and a good putter, but he just don't really, to me, have the type of game that has major success at this golf course. But like you said, we run faster conditions, so that might help. And like you also said, if you're looking for a top 10 possibility, Answer definitely fits that bill. I love Will Zalatoris on this golf course, though. Bombs away, Willie Z. Bombs away.
Yeah. Not only bombs away, man, but the kid is an absolutely sharp iron player. Ranks 5th in this field in strokes gained approach over the last 24 rounds. Solid around the green, very good off the tee. We don't like to target first timers at Augusta National, certainly, but this kid's kind of been breaking all the rules, since a top 10 at Wingfoot, right? So I've been on him. I'm going to stay on him. Maybe not as heavily as normal, just because it is a first time situation for him at Augusta. But I just love the kid's game, man. I feel like he's a star in the making and a player we're going to be seeing for years to come on the PGA Tour. As we move on down, Billy Horschel recently won the WGC match play. Justin Rose, we know what type of pedigree he has, but there's certainly some concerns about him after a withdrawal at the Arnold Palmer and then meeting the players. Max Homa's having a career year, won at Riviera. We know he plays a very difficult golf course as well. Getting a second look at Augusta. So, Homa's a guy that I can see myself rostering this week down here as we get into the low 7s, high 6s. Matthew Wolff, I have absolutely no clue what's going on. If either of you guys got any thoughts to guide me on Wolff, let me know. But I'm out for right now until I see something. Molinari, we kind of wanted to maybe get behind back in November. If you remember, Andrew, we were a little bit early. He's played well in spurts this year, but with all this value that's available and all the quality that's available, I'm just crossing these guys like Matt Wolff, Molinari. I'm crossing them off my list, honestly. Tell me if I'm wrong. Victor Perez is a really intriguing pivot for me right here at 7. We got guys just below him and just above him that are going to garner a whole lot of ownership, and he's a guy that we've seen play well. Made it to the semifinals of the match play. We've seen him play well in Europe. Had a couple other good starts over here. So give me your thoughts on somebody like Perez as a GPP play, Spencer, and get us on down into the 6s, man. Some of these guys are going to be very, very popular this week.
Yeah, I don't know. Like this range from maybe Harris English can turn it around a little bit to his early season form. other than that, I mean, there's not too many guys that I'm extremely eager to play. Like Homa, as you mentioned, would be somebody that I would consider. He's right now projected to be one of the higher owned guys in this range. That's not necessarily something. Victor Perez has the putting skills to maybe keep the form going that he showed at the match play. I'm out of Lowry and Molinari. I think you're getting a little bit of. They don't have much ownership with them, but you have the major championship pedigree that I think some people want to go back to, and I just am not quite seeing it. And then Matthew Wolff for me is almost every single week a guy that is just a fade. Like I don't think he's as good as the perception is. And the one thing is that you always see him turn it around and then he keeps it going. Like when his form is bad, his form remains bad with it. So I'm going to be mostly out of this range. And then just to backtrack again really fast to something that Andrew said, because I thought it was a really good point. When he was talking about these guys that are high ball flight hitters versus low ball flight hitters, a guy like Abraham Answer here, I ran something in my model that's called distance to apex. So it's essentially just taking your guys on par 4s and 5s to hit the ball really high and long. And we know Answer's not a long hitter, but he's also a very low ball flight hitter. So he's 72nd for me in my model. I mean, that's something that Louis also had some problems with if we're just trying to pick some holes. Like if we're looking for guys that were a little bit above Scott and Day, Bubba, Sergio, those are guys that hit the ball far and high with it. So I guess when it comes down to it, though, I'd rather be up in the high $7,000 range, in the $8,000 range versus this low 7,000s. And then when I want to drop lower, I'm going to drop into the 6,000s. There's just not much here for me. Like a guy like Justin Rose has injury concerns coming into the week. I don't know. Joe, I'll let you say the stat that you told me before the tournament or before we were talking about this for the tournament. But, maybe Rose can strike lightning in the bottle. But there's just not much for me here.
Yeah, I think the stat you're talking about, Spencer, is since 2015, the most birdies or better gained. Jordan Spieth leads the way with like 106 or 109, and second's Justin Rose with 89, I believe. So huge drop off there between Spieth and the next highest guy with birdie or better, which is Justin Rose. But yeah, there are injury concerns there. And I'm with you, man. I think there's a lot of fertile ground here in the sixes. We traditionally see this soft pricing at the Masters. Sometimes we feel we can take advantage of it. Sometimes we can't. This feels like a slate we can. A lot of people are going to be trying to take advantage of this Corey Connors price, man. Really out of whack, coming in at 6,900. Had a T10 here back in November and has played beautifully this year. Tremendous ball striker. Ranks first actually in this field in strokes gained ball striking over the last 24 rounds. Top 5 in strokes gained approach, top 5 in strokes gained the tee to green. So this Corey Connors price is ridiculous, and his ownership's going to be ridiculous as a result. So I kind of feel like this is another spot. There's a couple of hot spots on this salary scale, guys, where we're going to have to make some decisions. And Corey Connors is one. Paul Casey's one, Jordan Spieth's one. We're going to have to figure out what to do up at the top. But Connors is tough to ignore at this price. If you're looking at pivots, Kokrak, Andrew knows, is always intriguing to me. He's kind of a pet player of mine. I love his tee to green ability, but I do have concerns here around the green. He did get a start under his belt back in November, his first Masters start. So kind of glad to have that out of the way. I'll be looking at Kokrak this week, and then we start talking about veterans, guys, and how important experience is. I think you've got to, it's gross, but you got to look at Matt Kuchar and Ian Poulter there at 6,800, guys that, have kind of recently shown some form. Both guys played well in the match play, and Kuchar played well at Valero. Andrew, tell me about your veterans down there, Kuchar and Poulter. What are you thinking?
Man, it's just hard for me to get back on the Kuchar train ever since he stiffed that caddy down in Mexico, man. I just hadn't been. He hasn't had a good vibe since, and actually, like you said, he has made
moral reasons.
Yeah, he has made a turn. Actually, here in the last few weeks, been playing pretty well. I love me some Leishman, but the recent form has just been really, really bad. A couple missed cuts in a row, maybe some like upper top 30s. Brian Harmon really, to me, don't hit it far enough to have success on this golf course. Woodland does, but you never know what Woodland's going to show up. One that really does, I mean, I know Ian Poulter's coming off like an 85 at Sawgrass or whatever he shot up in the 80s, but I mean, if the course is playing firm and fast, you gotta love Ian Poulter to dink around and make a bunch of pars and hit some par fives up and make some birdies. Really, then again, a name that's interesting to me, and I don't really know much about his game other than he's well known as CT Pan. Where we at on CT Pan? I've never mentioned his name in my entire life, but I want to get on him for some reason. Tied for 7th back in November, coming off a third at the Honda. Am I crazy to say CT Pan?
Well, I mean, if I'm looking at where he is on my model, he's 55th overall. He's 57th in his last 24 rounds around the green. He's 69th for me in putting, 62nd on fast bent grass.
Okay.
I'm trying to figure out where maybe there's something to look at here. I mean, he's pretty decent in 3-putt percentage. He's in the top third of the field there, which is going to come into play. He's not for me. Like, as I said, some of these guys that had these big performances in October, I'm willing to look the other way on them to an extent. Like, I'm not going to do it with Dustin, but with a guy like Pan, it's hard for me to go down that direction, where I do think there are other guys in that range that maybe possess a little bit more upside.
Okay,
Yeah.
give us some guys here in the low sixes you're looking at. We're looking at like Weisberger, Wallace, or maybe Zach Johnson. Who we looking at down here?
I mean, if we're parsing through some of these names here, like, a guy like Kevin Kisner, we can go through the same thing with Harman. Like, he may not have enough length for him to be able to compete here, but last year was the first time he had missed the cut. I thought he showed a little bit of life at the match play. I mean, that's obviously his event, but maybe he can turn it on. He had a 21st before his missed cut in 2019, so it's not like he's been immune to posting a finish here. I think if we go down a little bit further, Ryan Palmer at 6,500, he's going to be popular, but most of these guys that win the tournament at the Masters are top 30 ranked players in the world. Palmer's ranked, I believe, he's in the top 30. He's like 27, 28, 29 in the world with it. And, he's being priced as a guy that's nowhere near that range here. There are concerns with his short game. And then the one guy for me that I am really interested in, and he's going to be making his debut this week, would be Carlos Ortiz. And that's just because of his short game. Like, we saw it at Concession. It was a really fiery course there, where you had these undulating greens where the balls were, rolling all over the place. And Ortiz came out and gave a 15th place there. And I think when you dip down into this range, like, you're not necessarily, I think you're past the point of win equity for the most part with this. But Ortiz is somebody that at least has some upside, to where I'm going to bet him to be the low debut here. He's 24 spots higher for me in my model than his price tag. So he's 56th on DraftKings in price. I have him overall 32nd. Maybe Kevin Na is another guy who can get hot. Once again, Andrew, that's another guy that's just not long enough you could make an argument for with it. And then once we get lower than that, like, maybe Matt Jones continues it. He's added some length to his game recently, but there's a lot of sticky spots, because, like, Zach Johnson, when he did well here and he won, he was a guy who played every single par 5 as a 3-shotter. And I'm not so sure that that's the optimal game plan. Like, the firepower now with these guys is just so hard to get past. And the same thing can be said about Brendan Todd. It's like, you just have all these guys low in this range where their win equity is very low. You're looking for a top 20, 25 from them. And I'd rather take the guys that at least present a little bit more possibility to maybe, crack out a top 15. Like, to me, that would be Kisner, that'd be Na, that'd be Ortiz. Palmer, as I mentioned. Maybe you could make an argument that Christian Bezadenhout is a guy that could get hot with his putter. But I'd be curious to hear where you guys are thinking of going.
I got the play down here, boys.
Let's hear it.
Siwoo.
Siwoo's another guy. Yeah.
6,700 Siwoo. A couple top 25s here in his last 3 Masters starts. Playing much better since he went with the kind of the Harman coaching crew there. Man, he's kind of, I don't know if you guys ever seen Bull Durham, but he's kind of one of those guys with $1 million arm and a 5-cent head. But I feel like if if he's playing well, it kind of breeds confidence in Siwoo, and he's been playing well. So I really like him this week at 6,700. Certainly a guy that sticks out to me here. And a guy we saw play well last November and pop up again last weekend at Valero, just kind of a ride the hot hand type of play. Sebastian Munoz there at 6,600. Had a T19 here back in November. Hasn't played well this year, but he's the type of guy that's very streaky, can get hot, and maybe last week at Valero was the start of something for Sebastian Munoz. And I very, very rarely roster him, but I feel like he's worth noting at this price just because he's just really prodigious off the tee, and that's Cameron Champ. A lot of his stats, I'm sure, Spencer can kind of go those better than me. They're not going to look very good. But at the end of the day, distance does matter in the modern game. Distance matters at Augusta National, and Can Champ has plenty of it. So I think at 6,600, if you're in GP, please looking for, just a high upside value play down here in the mid to low sixes, I think you got to give Cam Champ a look. Even though I would prefer a couple other guys over him, just wanted to know him because, I do think he's a talented guy. As we move on down, there's not a ton for me, honestly, guys. You start getting into former champs, amateurs, making their first start, veterans, and there's just not much for me. I mean, once you get down to Lanto, and I think Andrew mentioned Zach Johnson, past that point, it's probably nowhere I'll be going, and really nowhere we need to go with all the value that's available on this salary scale. So, that's probably the cutoff point for me this week.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. Like, I think that the pricing is so soft that you don't need to go any lower than the guys you mentioned. As far as Champ goes, yeah, the stats are going to look horrible from the putting and the around the green. The one thing he has going for him is that the power is the great equalizer here. At least he has a skill set that if he's able to hit a bunch of greens in regulation, maybe he gets hot with the putter. He can turn this around. Munoz is another guy who's a streaky player that has upside, where if you're looking for a GPP dart throw, I don't mind going there. And Siwoo, kind of the same thing can be said around him. He's a 10th for me in strokes gained around the green. He's 15th in par 4 average. And he is another stat that I ran this week that I kind of like is I did a weighted par 5. So it encompasses so when I ran all my stats for the most part, I didn't just do like par 5 birdie or better percentage. I tried to encompass multiple stats into it because the Masters is a tournament where you kind of need everything to compete. So like when I looked at par 5, I looked at par 5 birdie or better percentage. I looked at proximity from over 175 yards. And then the one that I liked is par 5 going for the green percentage. So these are guys that are trying to get to the green in 2. And I think with the Masters and Augusta being a venue that you're going to need to score on when you get to the par 5s, especially when you get to the back 2 at 13 and 15, Siwoo for me is 20th in that stat. Munoz is 22nd, and Champ is 10th. And Palmer's 8th if we want to, just go a little bit lower. So those are guys that are going to give themselves scoring opportunities. And I think for a GPP, sure, they might implode at some point in this tournament, but they at least give you that skill set that you're looking for to score and make a run up the leaderboard.
Could not agree more. In closing, guys, well, I got to ask it, Spencer. First time ever, where's your heart at this week for Augusta?
Oh, see if we can make this 1-for-1 and hit the winner here. I guess I think the game of golf is better when Spieth is winning. I would like to see Jordan Spieth win here. I would say my heart is with Spieth. I think my brain is with Patrick Cantlay. I think Cantlay gets the job done and wins his first major this week.
Joe, where's your heart at, bud?
Man, my heart's with Jordan Spieth. I'm going with it. I'm going with my heart. I think there are arguments to be made as far as game theory with what to do with Jordan Spieth this week. We've tried to tackle those as best we can for everybody kind of listening, trying to figure out what to do with him. He's going to be extremely popular, but we've talked about it. We've wanted this moment for 2-3 years, Andrew. We've talked about him multiple times over the years, Spencer. Kind of when tossed around one and done picks and stuff like that. So, I mean, here we are. We've waited on it. One last week at Valero has looked great. All the arrows are pointing up. So, my boy Jordan Spieth, the Heart Play of the Week.
I'll tell you what, wouldn't we love to see 4 shots clear, maybe 11, starting the day at 11 under, Bryson and Jordan in the last group on Sunday. That would make all the TV ratings just pop like crazy. My heart also was with Jordan Spieth, but so that means people just go ahead and just 100% ownership across the board. But I'll tell you what, my mind is just, if we get these thunderstorms, it's going to throw a wrench in it. So, I mean, it could just be a luck of the draw kind of thing with Thursday, Friday. But I love the Patrick Cantlay look, but I'm also going to give Patrick Reed a look. Patrick Reed is where my mind's at. Nobody's talking about him. He puts on a second green jacket and gives it the double bird to the crowd. Patrick Reed.
I like it. I just to give a little bit of insight into the Vegas report I'm going to write this week. Reed is going to make my card. So I can't argue with you on that. I think that nobody's talking about him. I think he's, for better or worse, one of the more hated guys in the game. That's not coming from me. I think that's just what the perception is around him. And I think there's a lot of people that don't want to play him. And I think it makes for an interesting contrarian outlook for GPP contests. I think it makes for an interesting look because his odds get inflated in the outright market. And I could see Reed winning his second green jacket here.
Yeah, the most Reed thing ever would be for him to beat Jordan Spieth coming down the stretch on Sunday and just crush everybody's soul. I mean, that would just be a classic Reed move. So it could very well happen. Good call, Andrew.
Yeah, and then say I'm the real Texan in the crowd or something like that, some little line like that.
Let's keep DJ in mind too. I feel like everybody's kind of down on DJ, defending champion. Not too far removed from a really, really dominant stretch of golf where he far and away looked like the best player in the world. And I don't know if I'm, in the minority or majority, but I do feel like DJ's best is better than everybody else's. So keep DJ in mind. Might be a little sleeper.
I like it. I think we're going to be looking at a real exciting 2021 Masters. Hopefully we'll get great weather. They're looking at like 87 degrees Thursday, so it should be amazing. So, well, on the way out, folks, make sure you go to rotoballer.com, use the promo code NICE or T-OFF Sports. Or is it just T-OFF? T-OFF, isn't it?
Just T-OFF.
Just T-OFF for the promo code. I'm here with Spencer at T-OFF on Twitter, T-OFF Sports on Twitter, at Joe Nicely. I'm Andrew Putters. If you want one of these hats, hit up our Twitter. The rules are simple. If you don't win, you can buy one, but we do have limited availability. So I want to thank everybody for listening. Let's go do the Masters 2021. This is the Turn Fantasy Golf Podcast brought to you by Rotoballer.com.
It's gonna drive me crazy.